Hey everyone, it's Katie and Elisha from NowThatWe'reAFamily.com, and today, Katie, what are you going to be showing them?
I'm so excited because I get to talk to you about two of my favorite things, homeschooling and planning. And so we're going to talk about how we have gone about planning our homeschool year. I'm going to talk through exactly how we decided on the curriculum that we decided on. I have all the notebooks. I have the logbook. I'm going to tell you guys why I don't use a timetable. I'm going to walk you through all this stuff on my computer, how I stay organized. And I'm just really excited to show you guys everything that we have so far when it comes to homeschooling. So one of the very first things that you want to do when it comes to planning out your homeschool is find a curriculum that you love. I think often we try to pick curriculum based on our children's needs, and while I think that is great, I also think that when we have a love for teaching the subject that we're teaching, our children catch on to that love. And so I think we need to be sensitive to what subjects we aren't great at. So for instance, I don't love math naturally, so I want to find ways to support myself in passing on a love of math to my children, even though that doesn't come natural to me. But I love the English writing side of things, and I've been able to experience firsthand that any student I have tutored in English has absolutely loved English and said that English is their favorite subject. Whether they naturally like it or not, just because I love teaching it. So when it came to picking our curriculum, Elisha and I really considered what works for our family, what's gonna work for our family season of life. I'm about to have our 5th baby in a month, and so the school year starting directly after that. And so that's something that we really heavily considered. So we decided to not join a co-op this year because of our family stage of life, and just keep a lot more open-endedness in our schedule. Okay, so before we dive in here, I'm going to walk you through a ton of stuff. And if you want to see how a homeschool day in the life looks, I did just film a day in the life of a 6-year-old homeschooler with my son. And you could find that in my homeschool course, which will be linked down below, which is all about finding joy in teaching for the first 3 years. Or if you are a member of the Get It All Done Club, which will also be linked down below, you can access that video. We don't do day in the life content here on this channel just to protect our children's privacy, but that was a very fun video to film, and you can see all of this in action and how it actually looks in the home when it comes to juggling a 1st grader and then also a toddler and little children in between. One more thing I want to mention before we dive into the actual curriculum and how I adapted it into our home is you want to consider what your anchors are. What can you count on during your day? I think that one of the most important things we give our children when it comes to homeschooling is consistency. We need to give them consistency. It's a really big weakness in homeschooling because it's easy for our days to blow out. It's easy for stuff to happen. The day gets away from us and, oh, we did math 2 times this week. And that's really not helping our children just have the tools that they need to lay those foundational little bricks for success. I'm not someone who naturally follows through very well. I love the start of something. I get very excited at the beginning of things, and then I kind of throw it all out the window and get excited about something else. So it's very important for me to identify the anchors in my day. I'm gonna tell you guys, you're gonna see kind of what those are as we dive into this video. And this is how I've been able to stay consistent in homeschooling despite my spontaneous spontaneous nature and make sure that extra things like brush drawing or music lessons or all those extra little things still get added into our children's lives, because it's easy to fall back on the bare minimum, which we need to do sometimes, but we don't want to do consistently every single year. It's really fun to add in those extra things. Okay, so I'm pulling you up on my desktop here, and I just want to walk you through so you get an exact vision of what I do. I use Trello, I call it my brain, because I'm able to keep links to everything all in one spot here. So it's really helpful to just go in, be able to click on homeschooling, for instance, and have all the links that pertain to homeschooling here in this one spot. I actually give you a link to this homeschooling template in my homeschooling course just to make it easy for you and to get you started on the right path. But while I'm looking at curriculum, especially if things sound exciting as we go through the year, I just link it here. So I will link books that look cool. I will link writing curriculum that I think looks interesting. I will link English curriculum that looks interesting, or history or science or whatever the case may be. This really helps me avoid shiny object syndrome as we go throughout the year, because as we watch other homeschoolers, we start to get other ideas and we think, oh, that looks really cool, that looks really cool. And it's really easy to buy all this curriculum and not use it, or be yanking our children all throughout this little curriculum obstacle course, which I don't want to do either. So it helps me save the thought, and then if I think about it for a long time, Elisha and I talk about it, we decide this could be a really good fit for this child, then I know exactly where it is, and I can go in, I can find that link again, I can find the research on it, and I can purchase it. So that's one thing I love to use this Trello board for. Another thing that I love to use this for is as I am going through here and looking at all the things that I want to purchase, it can get expensive, right? And maybe we buy a curriculum and then we kind of regret it because we see another curriculum that we want to purchase. So I love putting kind of dream items to purchase here in this little folder. So notebooking binders. These are really cool. I saw these from a certain YouTuber. A child's book of words. Here I have brush drawing supplies. When I open up each one of these cards, you could see that I have everything linked in here. So this can help with budgeting when it comes to your homeschool, and you don't have to purchase everything at once, but you could have the peace of mind knowing you did the research all at once, and you can go in and purchase your wish list if you still have more money to spend. So that's one way that I love to do this. So now I'm going to take you into term 1 of our homeschool. We are using the CMEC this year. I experimented with Charlotte Mason. I read her books on philosophy this last year. It really resonated with me. I love her take on classical education. And we did a very loose form of Charlotte Mason education, a combination of Ambleside Online, which is a free curriculum, and then also just some things that I put together that I wanted our kids to do over this last year, and it worked really well for our family. So I felt good about paying the money to jump into the CMEC, knowing that this was already a good fit for me and our family. And it was a lot easier to talk to Elisha too and be like, no, this is why I want this curriculum, this is why I'm sold on it. And he was excited too about the kids getting into this curriculum. I think it's really important that you adapt whatever curriculum you get to your own home. So while I look at the year, and I do know year at a glance wise what 3 composers we're going to be studying, or all the musicians we're going to be studying, it can get really daunting to plan out the whole year at one time. And so while I have a big picture view, I then narrow in on term 1. Term 1 for us is 12 weeks. And so that's what I'm going to show you here on this spreadsheet. Here at the top, you can see we're doing the New Testament. I put in here, we're doing it 2 times a week for 20 minutes a day. And I have each one of the passages written down. So I'm not having to go online and figure this out. It's just written down for me. I have this printed out, but this is this is a version that's easier to screen record for you guys. You could see over here that we do have a week break. We might take this on week 7 if we need it, if someone gets sick or something like that. And then week 12 is exam week, where we take the time to quiz the kiddos on what they learned and see how are we progressing. Let me shrink this so you guys can see it all at a glance. Okay, this is an example of where I adapted. The CMEC says to do the Old Testament 2 times a week for 20 minutes. They have you reading directly from the scriptures. I love that we're doing that with the New Testament, but I also love my Abeka flashcard stories. I think the kids get a lot from them, especially at their ages, which are 6, 5, and 4. And so we are going to be doing Old Testament 2 times a week with the flashcard stories instead of sticking with the CMEC's Old Testament schedule. So we're going to go through David in hiding, and we're also going to go through David the King over the next 12 weeks or in term 1. Here we have Tales and Literature 2 times a week, and I'm writing down not just the book, I'm writing down exactly what story we're reading, what chapter we're reading, and so I'm not having to go find that information. You can see here we're reading from a book called 50 Famous Stories once a week, and then the other time a week we alternate between the Blue Fairy book, Aesop's Fables, and they had you alternating with something else, and I put in Shakespeare in there. We have a little child Shakespeare book. I want the kids to get comfortable with that, and the CMEC did not have any year 1 students going through Shakespeare, so that is where I added that in. Here we have American history, we have reading, we have math and logic. So logic is something that I'm adding to this program because I really love our kids studying logic. They really enjoy that too. Here we have natural history, elementary geography, and Spanish. That one will be kind of tricky for me to teach, but the kids really want to do it. They really want to be able to communicate we go to the same Mexican restaurant consistently, and they talk with the server there a little bit, and they really want to talk to her more. So it's kind of fun that we have that outlet to practice. Here we have another instance where I adapted, and I'm having the kids do penmanship during this section of the day instead of copy work. I added in instrument practice. Here we have artist study. So this is the artist that we're studying, and I wrote down for each week which picture we're going to be studying, so it's very clear for me. I'm not having to go look at a lesson plan. Like, if it's hard for me and I can't see it at a glance, everything, I'm not gonna do it because I have 10 minutes right now and I just need to do the lesson. I don't wanna go find all the things and look up the study guide and wonder what we're studying. Here I have a little note for singing hymns, folk songs, and foreign language songs. I will show you what we're doing specifically for memory work. For the composer study, I picked Mozart. The CMEC was studying a little more obscure musician, and I really want to start with Mozart and Chopin and Bach and just artists that the kids are going to hear about, composers that they're going to hear about really often. And you know, if you never have to pronounce Chopin in your whole life, that's great. So we'll start young with those. Here we have recitation. So in each term, the kids will be doing 2 poems, an Old Testament passage, a New Testament passage that are both about 6 verses, a psalm, and then here we have art instruction, notebooking. Again, I didn't just put notebooking, like that's a term that a lot of homeschoolers like to throw around. And what's the first thing to get dropped by the wayside? Notebooking, because it's so random, like it's so broad, right? So I wrote down exactly when we're going to notebook. We're gonna notebook when I read the Burgess Bird book. We're gonna notebook 6 items that they find in nature this term. They're going to do paint 1 letter that they write to someone, and they are going to paint a story while I'm reading a story. So those are things that we're gonna do this term. I have paper Sloyd on here, and I also have poetry. So obviously that's a ton of stuff, right? And if I were to look at this list a year ago without having the anchors that I have in my day, I would say, okay, Katie, that is way too ambitious. You're never gonna do any of that. Now, there are some weeks where we probably won't get to everything, but I am really confident because the systems I have in place that support me, that we're going to do the majority of this weeks without any extra stress to me. And I'm going to dive into exactly how I do that in just one moment. Let me bring up real quick what I did for our recitation in term 1. Again, I don't want to be finding all these passages. I just want this printed out, and in my notebook, I just pull out my notebook and we have all the passages right here. So I'm not pulling out the Bible and the poem book and the hymn book and everything. I just have all the lyrics easily accessible for me whenever we want to practice. Something I also did here at the top that you'll see is I wrote down what we need to review. As you memorize more and more passages and bigger passages, you don't want that to just fall by the wayside. You really want the kids to be able to share when they're called upon to share, or to be able to quote that from memory consistently over time. So I put down what we're going to review here. I put our new psalm, which is going to be Psalm 121 this term. Our term 1 passages for the New Testament, which is Romans 1:16 through 24. And our Old Testament passage, Genesis 1 through 5. I also put the poems of the term, so I have our review poems here, and then I have A Letter as a Gypsy Elf, and I also have Autumn Fires. I actually took both of these poem recommendations from Ambleside Online. Ambleside Online is a free resource, so I like to be able to pull from them when I want to swap something out that the CMEC is doing. And then down here, I have the hymns that we're reviewing this term and the hymns that we are learning this term. Okay, so let's dive into the actual anchors now. How are we going to actually make all this happen over the next 12 weeks?
There we go.
Okay, so this is a peek into just my brainstorming notebook, and I wrote down the times that I can count on during the day. So I have our breakfast time here. We always do something during breakfast, and I utilize the children being quiet and having their mouths full, and the toddler being happily entertained. So this is kind of a block that I know I can count on because we eat every single day. Then I have before math time. I have our lunch loop. Again, I utilize lunch when the kiddos' mouths are full and I'm able to talk them through things. I have, let's see, here's just little notes that I'm making. I can count on the evenings when we're all together as a family. We have one morning school block. This is when I put my toddler to bed. And so I know that I can count on that time because he is playing happily for about 30 minutes to 40 minutes on his own in his crib. So I know I can count on that time. Another time I can count on is the quiet time in our day, which is our afternoon time. This is between 1 and 3 when the two younger ones nap. So think through while you're planning out your homeschool day, what are the times that you can count on? You can always count on meals. Can you count on waking up before your little kiddos get up? Can you do something with just your older two children? That's a time that I have utilized in the past. I know I won't be utilizing that for term 1 because I will be postpartum and will be getting all the sleep I can whenever I can. What are the quiet times in your day? Do you have an afternoon quiet time when a baby goes to bed? Do you have a morning quiet time when a baby goes to bed? Do you have the evening time when your younger kids go to bed a little bit earlier than your older kids? What can you count on? And then you're going to want to build on those times. So as you can see, looking at this notebook, I then went in and wrote down how much time do each one of these subjects take. And I just wrote down kind of my, first I just clustered and I was like, okay, I can see this is what we usually do during breakfast. And so this all really makes sense to me. Before math, I added this in as a new little chunk because it's only a few minutes. I can do this while the toddler and the baby are still running around and playing and active. And so that was really easy to add into our homeschool as a little chunk here. Here with this lunch loop, I was able to realize, oh, we're only doing American history one time a week, 50 famous stories one time a week. The Blue Fairy book, Aesop's, and instead of the novel here, we're doing Shakespeare one time a week. Composer study, that's one time a week. I can link these all into a loop. For the last year, I've been reading a novel for 20 minutes while the children eat their lunch. So I'm replacing that read aloud with 5 different subjects over the course of the week. So that just knocked a ton of stuff off my master list. So I'm looking at my master list, which is on the computer for term 1, right? And then I'm just plugging in all the different subjects. So I have a lot of our subjects already covered with just breakfast, lunch, and 5 minutes before we sit down to do our bookwork. So I was feeling pretty good at this point. In the evening, I realized, okay, we can do hymn review with Daddy. That's a great time. Elisha can play the guitar, the kids sing. That's really easy to add in. And then my morning school block, this is when we do our bookwork. This is when the kids, they've already played outside for a bit. They've gotten their wiggles out. Again, the baby is in his crib. The toddler is playing happily by himself, usually with Magna, I don't know, those little Magnetile blocks or train tracks or something like that. And so I was able to sit down and go, okay, math is a daily subject, but we're doing that only 20 minutes a day. Bible time, we do that for 20 minutes, 4 times a week. And then I switched around this handwriting thing, and then Spanish, we're gonna add in 10 minutes of Spanish. So it's really easy for me. We were already doing math and Bible. We're just gonna do 10 minutes of Spanish, and I can do that. I don't have Spanish just any time during the day, because am I gonna get to the Spanish lesson? No. But I have it stacked, the Spanish with the Bible. And so that's just like a little block. We're just gonna go from one thing to the next. And I wanna encourage you guys, why I'm walking you through this is because we are all in seasons of life where we can sit down and we can do a 2.5-hour school block in the morning and be done, because we have little kids. This is a big reason. I'll show you what I do in my mother's logbook, but I don't have a timetable. I don't have a between 9:10 and 9:15 we do this, because between 9:10 and 9:15 I might be nursing or changing a diaper, or someone got hurt on the trampoline, and now I'm behind. And now my whole day is messed up, because now I'm doing that at 9:30, and at 9:30 I was supposed to be doing a history lesson or whatever the case may be. So I don't do times, I do blocks. And that for me works a lot better and sets me up for success. If you're able to sit down and just go lesson after lesson after lesson after lesson and get it all done in 2.5 hours, that's amazing. But if you don't have that kind of lifestyle, or if your family's not in that stage of life, don't feel bad, and this can be a way to make it work for you. Then in this afternoon school block, so this is basically during my 2 youngest nap time, I do another loop. So I was realizing that natural history, geography, artist study, art instruction, and paper Sloyd, again, are only 1 time a week. The only topic or subject that we are doing daily is reading. So this was really easy for me to be like, okay, we're gonna start with reading, and then we're just gonna add on 10 or 20 minutes of these extra subjects. I'm still able to be done with Leon and Lucy after an hour. They go to their rooms for a quiet time for an hour from 2 to 3, and I have a completely quiet house from 2 to 3, and I'm able to nap or do whatever I need to do. So I wrote down all these times. Once I wrote down, I kind of blocked where I thought stuff should go and where I thought it would fit best. Then I wrote down the actual amount of time, and what do you know? It turns out the kids are doing 2.5 hours a day, which is great. That's what I'm trying to aim for. And then it's 3 hours a day for me, because I'm working individually with a couple of the children. It ends up being a little bit longer because I have some things that I do with my preschooler. So that is kind of my brainstorming notebook. I then went in and put it all into a weekly logbook. So I created a weekly logbook system that is not a timetable, but it still keeps me on track. And this is how I plan the week every Sunday night. So I have this notebook. It's just from Target. I will link the dimensions and what it is down below if you guys want the exact same size. But here's an example of a week at a glance for me. And I was able to, again, pull up my 12-week overview for term 1. And I was able to break that down by looking at what was required of me in that first column for the first week. And I lay it all out exactly here. So here on the left-hand side, you could see that I put down our anchors. So what are we going to be doing for breakfast? What are we going to be doing before math, in the morning school block, for our lunch loop, for the afternoon, like quiet time school block, in the evenings? What are the extras that I don't have stacked anywhere? And what are the opportunities of the week? So this is where I can layer in Bible study. Here I have father-son ministry, the boys doing jujitsu, when the kids do soccer. Whatever the extra opportunity is, I can put that in there when I go to plan out the actual week. So here I go in and I get a little bit more specific because, again, I'm planning my week out. So I write down exactly, okay, the poetry that we're reviewing today is a book. Here we're reviewing Little Things, Wednesday we're reviewing G.K. Chesterton, Thursday reviewing Tomorrow and Tomorrow from Hamlet, and Friday we're working on our new poem. And then I put the exact scriptures in here that we're reviewing. So on my overall 12-week at a glance, I'm able to see, okay, we're doing poetry review and scripture review, but here I break it down daily. What are we doing? So I'm making sure we're cycling through everything. Before math here, I put the exact hymn we're working on, which is Amazing Grace, the poem that we're working on, which is A Letter to a Gypsy Elf. I alternate. Once the kids learn the poem, then we go in and we memorize the scripture. But I find that daily review is best instead of trying to do the poem and the scripture memory at the same time. For the morning school block here, I just have math. We'll just do whatever consecutive lesson is next. I put down the scripture passage we're doing, the Spanish lesson we're doing. We haven't gotten into this yet, but when we add it in, I won't just put Spanish, I will put the actual page number and what we're actually learning for the Spanish lesson. For the lunch loop, I have here like the poem, and this is just any poem in our Just So Poems book, and this is the lunch loop, how that's gonna look. I try to keep Fridays, as you can see over here, a little bit lighter because I'm doing Sabbath prep here for the weekend. Here's what our afternoon school block is. I haven't gone in for this week yet and written down the exact natural history lesson or the exact elementary geography lesson that we're going to be working on, but I will do that before we start the week. And then here you can see I make these little notes. Okay, we're gonna be notebooking for this subject. We're gonna be notebooking for this subject. And there's one more subject. Here we go. We're notebooking up here for this subject. I make those little notes for me because if I go throughout my day, I'm not gonna pull out the notebooks. It's not second nature to me yet to notebook and have the kids get out the watercolors and do the drawing and stuff. Like that's not, I don't think about that yet. So put your brain on paper. And then here we have the evening and the extras. What we are doing this year, we completed 1,000 hours. Well, we completed 1,000 hours in 9 months this year. So it's kind of something that is just a natural part of our lives at this point. I'm not gonna be keeping track this next year in the same way, but I do think that being out of doors is a part of our children's education, and I count that as a big part of what's important for their education at this stage and their development at that stage. So for this reason, I have this little outdoor section here and I tally their hours that we spend outside a day. So I'm still able to look at this and be like, oh, we only spent 2 hours outside a day, or oh, we're doing good. We're spending 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7 hours outside during the day, because I don't want the kids to just get bogged down in all the bookwork. I want them to be having large chunks of time to play and be imaginative and be creative. So I have that on here because if that's not on here, it's very easy for me to value what I can check off and not other things that I should be valuing more. So I put anything I need to check off on here. So there you have my little week at a glance. Super, super easy. And I just make one spread like this every week and I am good to go. So that is how I plan out a kind of complicated curriculum that is not open and go. I customize it to our family, and I really just feel like I get the best of both worlds. I get the best of being able to have this curriculum that I can kind of help design and work into our home and adapt to our children and my teaching style, but I also have a lot of different subjects that we're involved in, and it's all just, again, easy for me to, I make my own open and go. Just look at it and we go from there. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, click the thumbs up button, click the subscribe. Again, that day in the life with my 6-year-old will be up in the homeschool course and the Get It All Done Club. I hope to see you guys over there, and I will see you guys next week.